Welcome back, everybody. Today's deep dive is going to be about how AI is changing things up in HR,
Hmm.
especially, when we start thinking about data privacy and security.
Sure.
So to help us dig into all of this, we've got some articles and research,
Okay.
including a piece by Frank Jinak,
Oh, interesting.
and he pronounces it Janak, not Jenak.
Good to know.
He's been building software for over 30 years,
Wow.
so he's got a ton of experience to share.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So one of the things that kind of jumped out at me from, what I've been reading and what Frank had to say
Yeah.
was this real push and pull between like using AI to do all this cool stuff,
Mm,
but then also making sure that you're not, stepping on people's toes with their data.
right. Absolutely.
So what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, it's a real balancing act, that's for sure.
Yeah.
On one hand, you have the potential for AI to really streamline processes, identify the best talent out there, personalize training, even help predict like employee turnover.
Mm.
But on the other hand, all of that requires a lot of data.
Right.
And some of it can be super sensitive.
Absolutely. Like we're talking performance reviews, salary information, maybe even stuff that, people just wouldn't want to have out there.
Exactly.
And it's not just about like companies being responsible, right?
Yeah.
There are actually regulations coming into play.
Exactly. The EU's General Data Protection Regulation, the GDPR,
Yeah.
and then the newer AI Act have really set a global standard for data privacy.
And the interesting thing about these regulations is
Oh, yeah.
it doesn't even matter if the company's in the EU.
Exactly.
They still apply, right?
That's right.
If you're using EU citizens' data.
That's the concept of extraterritoriality. Yep,
So the EU's really taking the lead here.
definitely.
What about the US? What are we doing?
It's a bit more decentralized here.
Okay.
We have states like California, New York have their own data privacy laws, but at the federal level, it's more about, guidelines and encouraging companies to innovate responsibly.
So it's kind of like a patchwork,
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
which probably makes it kind of tricky for companies that
Absolutely.
are all over the globe.
Yeah, for sure.
But going back to AI, Frank's article mentioned something that I thought was pretty wild.
Okay.
He was talking about the possibility that like AI models, especially these big language models that are, all the rage these days,
Yeah, yeah.
that they could actually be memorizing employee information.
Uh-huh.
It sounds like something straight out of science fiction.
It does, doesn't it?
Is that a real concern?
It's definitely a valid concern.
Mhm.
Large language models, or LLMs, are trained on tons and tons of data.
Right.
And if that data includes personal information,
Yeah.
there's a risk that the model could hold on to that information even if it's not supposed to.
So how could someone even get to that information?
Well, I mean,
Is it like hackers breaking into a system?
that's one way,
Okay.
but there are more subtle ways, like something called a model inversion attack.
Whoa. Okay, now you're talking
Yeah.
model inversion attack.
It sounds intense, yeah.
What does that even mean?
Okay, so imagine you have an AI.
Okay.
It's designed to predict employee turnover.
Mhm.
An attacker could ask the AI very specific questions and then, kind of analyze the responses
Yeah.
to try and put together like private details about an employee,
Wow.
even if those details weren't meant to be revealed.
So it's like putting together a puzzle,
Exactly.
but in reverse.
Yeah, it's like reverse engineering the AI's output.
So even harmless questions
Yeah, potentially.
could
Yeah.
reveal stuff that shouldn't be revealed.
That's the scary part. Yeah.
So what can companies even do
Well,
to protect all of this, right? I know Frank mentioned some traditional ways like data masking,
right.
pseudonymization, anonymization.
Yeah.
Are those enough to keep things safe?
They're important tools for sure. Okay.
But they might not be foolproof,
Okay.
especially against, really skilled attackers.
Right.
Data masking, for example, might hide some digits of, say, a social security number,
Yeah.
but other parts are still visible.
Right.
Pseudonymization replaces names with codes, but those codes could be traced back
I see.
to the real data.
And anonymization.
Yeah.
I thought that meant like removing all the identifying information.
It aims to,
Okay.
but there are ways to undo that,
Wow.
de-anonymization techniques.
Oh, wow.
Especially if the attacker has access to like other databases or something.
So even with those traditional methods,
There's always some risk.
there's still risk.
Yeah.
So then what?
Well, that's where Frank's proposal comes in.
Okay, tell me more.
So he suggests combining those traditional methods
Okay.
with something called differential privacy,
Differential privacy.
or DP.
DP. Okay.
So can can I try to explain it with a little analogy?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so think of it like an employee satisfaction survey.
Okay.
Like want to see, the overall trends, the big picture,
Right.
but you don't want to reveal any individual's answers.
Makes sense.
So differential privacy basically adds some carefully calibrated noise to the data,
Okay.
and it makes it impossible to connect, specific answers back to a single person.
So it's like you're blurring things a little bit
Kind of, yeah, but in a very precise way.
to protect that individual's privacy.
Right,
But
exactly.
you can still see the overall pattern.
Exactly. The noise is added in a way that doesn't mess up the insights you're trying to get.
That's amazing.
That's a cool technique.
So if you combine all of this stuff, these approaches, maybe companies can actually start to use AI and HR in a safe way,
That's the hope.
right? While still, keeping people's data safe.
It's all about minimizing the risk.
And it's crucial, right? Because at the end of the day,
Yeah,
this is all about trust. If
absolutely.
employees don't feel like their information's safe, they're not going to use any of this stuff.
Right. It'll backfire. Who wants to feel like they're being watched all the time?
Exactly.
Right. Or that their information's at risk.
It's not just about following the rules, though.
Right.
It's about building a culture where everyone's responsible with data.
Mm-hmm. Within the company.
Yeah, being transparent about how AI is being used,
Yeah.
giving employees control over their own information,
Right.
and always evaluating and improving those data protection measures.
So it sounds like this is a really complicated thing
Oh, yeah, very much so.
that's constantly changing.
For sure.
And companies need to be they need to be on top of it.
They got to be proactive.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But let's maybe shift gears a bit and talk about what AI could do to help HR.
Okay, sure.
Because it's not all,
Right, it's not all doom and gloom.
doom and gloom.
No, not at all.
There's some cool stuff that could happen.
There is, actually. AI has the potential to make things in HR much more efficient,
Yeah.
more data-driven,
Mhm.
and, believe it or not, even more equitable.
Really. More equitable. How so?
Well, for example, you can use AI to take bias out of resume screening,
Wow.
which really helps level the playing field for candidates from all kinds of backgrounds.
Oh, that's great.
It can also be used to identify those high-potential employees who might otherwise be overlooked,
Yeah.
and then personalize learning and development so people can really, reach their full potential.
And AI can probably help analyze those big data sets
Oh, yeah.
to kind of figure out what's coming next, what they
Yeah,
need to do,
for sure.
help HR make better decisions.
Absolutely.
So AI could take on some of the more boring work.
The routine tasks, yeah.
So HR can actually focus on the human stuff.
Exactly, the strategic stuff.
So while there are definitely risks and challenges,
Mm-hmm.
there's also a lot to be excited about
Oh, absolutely.
when it comes to AI and HR.
Definitely. It's about finding that balance.
Right.
Innovation and responsibility,
Yeah.
efficiency, but also well-being.
Well said. But before we go too far down that road, let's maybe take a step back
Okay.
and talk about some of the broader ethical things we've got to think about
Yeah, that's important.
with AI and HR.
It's a crucial conversation for sure.
Yeah, let's dive into that.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we've been talking about the good stuff, like streamlining and making things more equitable.
Mm-hmm.
But now I want to get into the ethics of it all.
Right.
What are some of the things that we need to be worried about when it comes to AI?
Yeah.
Potentially making decisions about people's jobs, their careers.
Yeah, it's a really complicated area, and one of the biggest concerns is bias.
Okay.
The potential for bias in these AI systems.
Right.
They learn from data, right? So if the data itself has biases,
Mhm.
which, let's face it, a lot of workplace data probably does,
Probably does, yeah.
the AI is just going to learn those biases
Okay.
and maybe even make them worse.
So like, for example, if a company has always hired, more men for leadership roles, the AI might just keep doing that, right?
Exactly. It might unfairly favor male candidates in the future.
That's not good.
And it's not just gender, right? It
Right.
could be racial bias, ageism, even things like unconscious bias against certain personality types.
Wow. Yeah,
It's a lot to think about.
that is a lot to think about.
Yeah.
So how do we stop that from happening?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that AI is actually making things more fair
Yeah.
and not just like, continuing the bad stuff?
It really starts with awareness, right?
Uh-huh.
Being aware that this bias can exist in the data
Right.
and then taking steps to fix it.
Okay.
So that means really digging into the data that's used to train these AI models,
Mhm.
looking for patterns, looking for bias,
Yeah.
and correcting it wherever you can.
And it probably helps to have a diverse group of people building the AI, right?
Absolutely. Diversity is key.
Yeah.
Having different perspectives, different viewpoints leads to better, more inclusive solutions.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And it's not just who builds it, but how it's used.
Oh.
We need to have clear rules, clear guidelines, and make sure that any decisions the AI is making are fair.
And people should know how it's being used.
Right. Transparency is key.
Yeah.
Employees need to understand how AI is being used in hiring, performance reviews, promotions, everything.
Right. They should be able to, speak up if they see something that seems wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. They need to have a voice.
And companies have to listen, right?
Absolutely. They have to be responsive.
This isn't just checking a box.
No. It's got to be a real commitment to doing things the right way.
Yeah. Using AI ethically, responsibly.
Exactly.
And that responsibility goes beyond just individual companies, right?
Right. It does.
It's everyone. Policymakers, researchers,
Everyone involved, yeah.
the people who are building this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We all got to work together to make sure that AI is actually benefiting everybody.
It's a shared responsibility, definitely.
Okay, so we've talked about bias as a big concern. What else should we be thinking about when it comes to the ethics of AI?
Another big one is autonomy
Yeah.
and human agency,
Yeah.
As AI takes on more tasks in HR,
Mm.
we have to make sure that employees still feel like they have a say.
Right.
They
yeah.
still have control over their careers.
Right. We don't want people feeling like
Yeah.
they're,
Yeah.
being controlled by some algorithm they don't understand.
No, not at all.
It's got to be a balance,
Yeah,
right?
it is. It's about finding that balance.
Between what the AI can do and,
Yeah.
the human element.
It's interesting, though, because sometimes AI can actually make things more human-centered.
Really?
Yeah, think about it.
Okay.
If AI is doing all the boring paperwork,
Yeah.
the routine stuff.
That's the stuff no one wants to do.
Exactly. That frees up HR professionals to actually spend more time with people.
Right. Yeah.
Coaching them, mentoring them, building relationships.
That makes sense.
So it's not about replacing humans with robots.
Right.
It's about using AI to help humans do what they do best.
I like that. Using AI to make things more human.
Yeah, exactly.
How do we get there? How do we make sure that's what's happening?
Well, we need some ground rules, right?
Okay.
Some clear ethical guidelines, specifically for AI in HR.
Like a rule book.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
And luckily, that conversation's already happening.
Oh, good.
Yeah, there are organizations like the IEE who are developing ethical standards for AI in general.
Okay.
And there are a lot of discussions about, specific regulations for AI.
That's good.
But it's not just about the rules, right? It's also about the culture of the company
Yeah.
and the leadership.
Okay.
Leaders need to set a good example,
Mm.
show that ethical AI is important to them,
Yeah.
create a culture of transparency and accountability.
And they also probably need to invest in training
Absolutely.
for HR people so they know how to use this stuff the right way.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's all about empowering HR professionals to be like the guardians of both technology and human well-being.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah.
So it's not an easy fix,
No, it's not.
but it's something we have to get right.
The future of work depends on it.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
All right, so we've covered a lot today, from data privacy to the ethical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Let's shift gears for a second and go back to something Frank mentioned in his article.
Okay.
He talked about trust.
Yeah, he's right on the money with that one.
That seems like a pretty big deal when it comes to all this.
Trust is foundational when you're talking about AI and HR. If employees don't trust that their data is safe, that it's being used ethically,
Right.
they're not going to want anything to do with these AI tools.
Yeah.
And the whole thing could backfire.
So how do companies build that trust?
Well, I think a big part of it is just being open and honest.
Okay.
Transparency is key, right? Companies need to be upfront with employees about how AI is being used,
Yeah.
what data they're collecting, and how they're protecting it.
And they should give employees some control,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Like over their own data.
Employees should be able to access their data,
Right.
update it, even delete it if they want to.
Because it's their data.
Exactly. It's about respecting their rights.
But trust takes time to build, right?
Oh, for sure. It doesn't happen overnight.
It's not just a one-time thing.
Companies need to show that they're committed to ethical AI practices over the long haul.
Consistently.
Yeah, consistency is key.
And they should be willing to change, to adapt if things aren't working.
Absolutely, yeah.
And it's not just about protecting data, right?
Right.
It's also about showing employees how AI can actually help them.
Exactly. What's in it for them?
What's the benefit?
Yeah, like, For example, AI can help employees identify their skills gaps
Okay.
and then recommend personalized training programs.
Wow, so they can improve
Exactly.
and maybe get a promotion.
Yeah, or even find mentors within the company
Oh, that's cool.
who can help them advance their careers.
So it's not just about what AI can do for the company. It's about what it can do for the people who work there.
It's got to be a win-win.
And when employees see those benefits, they're more likely to be on board
Absolutely, yeah.
with the whole AI thing.
It's all about finding that sweet spot,
Yeah, yeah.
where innovation and responsibility meet, where things are efficient but also good for people.
Yeah, that balance.
Exactly.
All right, so we've talked about ethics, we've talked about trust, this whole multifaceted approach to AI in HR.
A lot to consider.
Could you give us a quick recap? Like, what are the key things people should remember?
Okay, yeah. So first and foremost, data privacy is a must.
Okay.
Companies absolutely have to protect employee data.
Yep.
And we talked about this. It's not enough to just do the bare minimum.
Right.
They need to be using the latest, the most advanced methods.
Like differential privacy.
Exactly. Differential privacy, things like that.
Okay, so data protection, number one,
Mm-hmm.
and then number two.
We got to be really, really careful about bias.
In these AI systems,
Right.
we need to check the data,
Mm.
make sure it's diverse, set clear guidelines.
And this isn't a one-time thing.
No, it's not. It's ongoing.
It's constantly evolving.
The technology's changing, the rules are changing, everything's changing.
So we have to keep learning, keep adapting.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, those are two big things.
Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts for our listeners?
Yeah, I would just, leave everyone with this question.
Okay.
As we keep exploring AI in HR, what does it mean to use it responsibly?
Wow, that's a good one.
What does it mean to use it in a way that benefits both the company and the employees?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It really makes you think about the bigger picture.
It's not just about the tech, it's about the people.
Exactly, yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a perfect place to leave it.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. So it's like, we want to make sure we're using this powerful tool in the right way. Exactly.
And that employees are actually, comfortable with it all.
Comfortable and informed.
Informed, right.
Mhm.
Because if they don't understand how it works,
Right.
they're going to be like, whoa, hold on a second.
Yeah. You can't just expect blind trust, right?
Right, exactly. It's got to be informed.
Informed trust.
And how do you build that?
Well, a big part of it is, like we said, transparency, open communication, and companies really showing that they're taking these ethical considerations seriously.
Right, putting their money where their mouth is.
Yeah, exactly. Walking the walk.
Okay, so it seems like we're just getting started with AI in HR.
Oh, yeah. We're just scratching the surface.
There's so much more to discover, to figure out.
It's a rapidly evolving landscape, for sure.
It's exciting, but also kind of scary.
Yeah, I get that.
It's a lot of responsibility.
It is. It is a big
Don't
responsibility.
see it this right.
Absolutely. But it's one we can't shy away from.
Right.
We have to be thoughtful, intentional,
Hmm.
and always, always put people first.
Human-centered AI.
That's the goal.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground today,
We have, yeah.
from data privacy to ethics to the importance of trust.
It's been a deep dive for sure.
Can you give us, the top 3 takeaways for our listeners?
Sure. So number one, data protection is non-negotiable.
Got it.
Companies have to take this seriously. They need robust measures in place.
Mm-hmm. And not just the old school methods.
Exactly, yeah. They need to be looking at those cutting-edge approaches.
It's like differential privacy.
Differential privacy, yeah, things like that.
Okay, data protection, number 1.
Uh-huh.
What's number 2?
Number two is being super vigilant about bias. We got to make sure these AI systems are fair.
Yeah.
So that means, like we talked about, checking the data, having diverse teams,
Mm-hmm.
clear guidelines, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, data protection, bias.
And number three,
Yeah, number 3.
this is an ongoing process.
Yeah.
AI is evolving, the regulations are evolving, our understanding of the ethical implications is evolving.
So we got to stay on top of it.
You have to keep learning, keep adapting.
Right, it's not a set it, forget it kind of thing.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a great list. 3 big things to remember.
Yeah, I think those are the key takeaways.
Any last words of wisdom for our listeners before we wrap up?
Yeah, just one final thought. As we move forward with AI in HR, let's all ask ourselves, what does responsible AI look like?
Oh, that's a good one.
How can we use this technology to benefit everyone involved?
It's a question we all need to be asking ourselves.
For sure.
Okay, I think that's a perfect note to end on.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks again for joining us for this deep dive into AI and HR.
It's been my pleasure.
Always great to chat with you.
Likewise.
And to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep. We'll catch you next time.